Thank you for watching or listening to this free podcast of the Young Turks. We want to make sure that you get some portion of the show every day, but if you want the full show, which is actually 5 segments, come become a member and support independent media as well. TYTnetwork.com/join. Meanwhile, enjoy the free podcast. It's Friday. You know what's next. Drop it. Cenk, Anna Kasparian, Alonzo Bodden.
Hello.
Hey, Alonzo, great to have you back.
Good to be back. Thank you. Thank you.
We were talking about you the other day. We said, "Where's Alonzo? We need Alonzo."
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of road stuff, but it's good to be home. This week was a great week. I love you guys, but I was like, everything's going good. Oh, the Young Turks called with Trump stuff. Damn.
I know.
I'm happy to be
Welcome
here.
to our lives.
You're in a lot of those famous election night videos that the right wing spreads all around the internet.
Yeah. Well, they're good enemies to have. You know what I mean? Like that's the one. I never want to be on one where it's like I'm supporting them.
Yeah.
Honestly, years ago, I did a skeet shooting charity thing for a friend, and the lanyards had NRA on them, and I was like, for me, this is worse than porn. Like, I'd rather just get me out in a sex tape, but don't show me wearing an NRA lanyard. That is trouble. Now everyone's going to be looking for it.
That's awesome. I love your attitude. Okay. All right. We got a lot of great stories for you guys today. Trump talked to the New York Times without any staff. I love how they emphasize it 1,000 times because they're like, this is going to be good.
Yes.
The child was unsupervised.
Yeah.
And boy, they were right about that. We got that coming up for you in a little bit. Look, there's 1,000 great stories as there is every day in the show. But my favorite, I have to confess, is that is the last one. The hypocrite, the anti-gambling hypocrite.
It's so good.
Alonzo, you're gonna miss that one, but it's so good. It's so good. Okay. So don't miss that. Watch the whole show. If you just have a chance to watch a couple minutes here, it's okay. If you're a member, you can always catch the whole show whenever you want, ad-free. By the way, this is the last day that we're promoting TYTnetwork.com/gift. So if you want to give the gift of TYT 3-month membership for just $25, so go take advantage of that now. Okay, before we get to the stories though, we have a fun, is this hooked in? Yeah, all right, here we go. We have a fun announcement. So can I get fun announcement background? That's the 12th anniversary. That's the, Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. All right, fun announcement for you guys. It's our 12th anniversary. Okay, all right. Okay. So we actually forgot it. It was.
Well, you're a dude, so it's fitting.
You don't say that at home, do you?
So December 12th, we have 2 different anniversaries. That's why it gets confusing. First one is when we first went on air on Sirius Satellite Radio. So that's February 14th of 2002. So soon we will be 16 years old, sweet 16. Okay, we'll celebrate that too.
Old enough for Roy Moore. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Actually, a little too old for Roy Moore.
Yeah. So now we also have a second one, which is when we started doing online video and doing a daily streaming show. And that was in December 12th of 2005. So earlier this month, we crossed 12 years that we've been doing this. Now, here's the fun fact. We are the longest running show on the internet, period. In the history of the internet, we are the oldest show. So it's called the Young Turks, but we're actually OGs. There was a bunch of shows that streamed live at the time that we did, but they've all gone under. So we are the sole survivor of the USS Internet. Now, of course, there are other shows that have joined us, but longest running live daily streaming show on the World Wide Web, which is pretty neat. And so we want to thank you guys, of course, for supporting us throughout all of these years and making the show possible. We recently crossed 7.6 billion views. That's the number of people on the planet. Not every one of them has viewed it. It's, of course, some people have viewed it multiple times. So I'm going to show you that video, but now we're almost past 8 billion now. We'll do that fun celebration in a little bit too. But here's the video we put together for that.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
No, that's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
They said you couldn't do it. You can't change the media. Don't try. Well, here we are. We're changing the media. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right. We have one other record I'd like to mention. On election night, which was a mixed bag, we broke the internet record for most viewing in one day. Over 1 million hours of viewing in one day. So it's been a hell of a ride. And for all of you guys who are OGs with us and have been watching the show a long time, we can't thank you enough. It's been an honor and a pleasure to do this show every day for 2 hours for you guys. So thank you for watching. All right, now let's do the rest of the show.
Okay. Michael Schmidt at the New York Times managed to get Donald Trump in an impromptu interview. This was a 30-minute long interview that happened at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is the place where Trump has spent most of his time as president of the United States. But this interview was interesting. They touched on a number of different topics, and Trump gave a number of different uncensored, unfiltered answers, so you know it's going to be fun. So on the topic of the Russia investigation, Trump had said that he thinks Mueller is going to be fair. You know, I was going to give him that. I think he's going to be fair. But he also repeated on 16 different occasions that there was no collusion. Okay, insisted 16 times that there has been no collusion discovered by this investigation. Okay.
Let's just note for real quick that there's no way that he can know that. The investigation is secret. So he has no idea what it has uncovered or not uncovered. And 16 times, a little defensive, I can't quite tell.
Cenk, I hate to correct you on this, but he could know because it says right here that he said, I have absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. Absolutely. So he could just walk over there and say, hey, let me see your investigation. Like, he's out of his mind. He's been out of his mind, but to say something like that, like the whole Constitution, the whole structure of the government, absolute right to do what I want.
Well, and the thing is, I don't even think he even really understands how our government works or how it's supposed to work. I think he was under the assumption that the president has the power to unilaterally do whatever and however he pleases. Now, in regard to the Russia investigation, he continued to say, it makes the country look very bad. And it puts the country in a very bad position. So the sooner it's worked out, the better it is for the country. You make the country look bad, okay? You make the country look bad. And the quotes that I'm going to read to you later will reinforce that.
Yeah, so on that, to him, to back up both of your points, he thinks, well, if I'm president, I run the place, and I run it any way that I want. No, in our system of government, there are 3 branches. You have to explain it to him like he's a child. But actually, children learned that a long time ago. And no, you're not a dictator. You can't do anything you want. And you are not the country. He keeps saying it makes the country look bad. No, it makes you look bad. But you think, well, I'm the president, so I'm now I'm the guy who represents everything. No, the country is fine without you, and it was great without you. It didn't need to be made great again, right? And so, but he's the most egotistical man I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of egotistical people, including myself. And this guy shatters all records.
He does, and later he will tell us all how he understands legislation better than any president in U.S. history. We'll get to that quote in a minute. But finally, to Alonzo's quote, or your reference to his quote about how he can do whatever he wants, let me give you the full quote in the full context. He said, I have absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department, but for purposes of hopefully thinking I'm going to be treated fairly, I've stayed uninvolved with this particular matter. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You fired Comey. Like, that's okay. Step number 1 of not remaining uninvolved or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's case after case of you like not letting the situation go and thinking that it's some sort of witch hunt. And then all of a sudden we find out all this information about how certain people in your campaign were not forthcoming. People are pleading guilty to charges in the Mueller investigation. Okay, you mentioned it 16 times in this interview. So
he also has said that Sessions, the Attorney General, should step aside. He did a terrible job of recusing himself. And even in this interview, he later says the job of the Attorney General is to protect the president. That's getting involved in the investigation. But the thing about Trump is, the old joke, parable, whatever, they ask the fish, how's the water feel? And he says, what water? Right? Because he's in the water. So with Trump, he's surrounded by stupidity for his whole life. So he doesn't know what stupid is. Like, he doesn't realize saying, hey, I want the Attorney General to protect me and not the law, and at the same time saying I'm not interfering with the investigation is stupid. He doesn't get it because he is stupid. He's so dumb. Well, he's surrounded by stupid and doesn't know what to do with, doesn't even recognize it.
It's true. Yeah.
Getting back to what you said earlier about how he doesn't know how the government works and he loves television. Shouldn't somebody get all of Schoolhouse Rocks? Just get them all on a loop and just say, okay, this weekend you have to watch all of this to see how. Remember Schoolhouse Rock?
Yeah.
They showed the different branches of government. They showed how a bill became a law, et cetera. Like, just say, okay, you have to watch this so you know what the president does and doesn't do.
Yes.
Alonzo, I think we got a good collabo idea here. Because I want to add on top of your idea, they should just put a Fox and Friends logo on it and just run it on his TV. And he'll be like, oh man, kill me to Deuce, you're doing a great job this morning. And he'll learn a lot more.
Yeah, so then he talks a little bit about his desire for bipartisanship, but how Democrats refuse to play ball. Okay, so he, according to the New York Times, he expressed frustration and anger at Democrats who he said refused to negotiate on legislation. Joe Manchin talks, he said, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do. Let's stop for a second. He doesn't do. He doesn't do. Okay.
He has the best words, Anna.
He has the best words. He is a cunning linguist. Okay, so let's put that back up. I know. I shouldn't have mentioned it in that. Okay. He also says, hey, okay, let me read the whole thing again so you guys don't get lost. Joe Manchin talks, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't do. Hey, let's get together. Let's do bipartisan. I say, good, let's go. Then you don't hear from him again.
Let's do bipartisan.
He thinks that's some chick in Russia.
Let's do.
He thinks that was a girl in Russia. We're going to do bipartisan because we heard she's bi and all that, you know. Yeah, I know. I just made this an adult show. Forgive me. Forgive me for that. This is the thing, the two reasons that's ridiculous. One, because, you know, the Republicans went so far out of their way to be bipartisan and work together with Obama.
Oh, yeah, they
But
did.
the other thing is, like, yeah, the Democrats didn't make it to the midnight meetings when you were scribbling onto the tax bill, you know, by hand, just scribbling in notes. And it's like they didn't work with us. Like, oh, we didn't work with you when you were doing your secret homework late at night. Like, it was, well, yeah. I don't know.
So that's right. They didn't ask for a single Democratic vote in the tax bill. And so one of the things they added at the last minute, whether it was midnight or not, was a giant real estate loophole, which goes to the advantage of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And so when you were adding a loophole for yourself and your family into the bill at the last minute, it wasn't in the Senate version, it wasn't in the House version. They added it when they were reconciling the bill, and they got a note. Some people think it was from Corker, but most likely it was from Trump and Kushner, who have even bigger real estate holdings than Corker. So you didn't ask the Democrats if it was okay to put a loophole for yourself in. You didn't ask them to do anything. You just did it all by yourself. And so you've never asked for them to legislate anything with you. Right, and besides which, even if he did, it would be a really bad idea for Democrats to work with him. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
They're not going to give, progressives what they want, and progressives are already, ready to tear, the moderate Democrats apart for, how complicit they've been for such a long time in policies that have actually gone against, progressive values. So, yeah, go ahead and say that you, A, want to be bipartisan, and B, that anyone would even want to work with you. You're political suicide for anyone that's on the left, in my opinion. Okay, so moving on, he also wants to tell everyone how smart he is, because that's what Trump does. So, here we go. This is going to be great. I know the details of taxes better than anybody. Better than the greatest CPA. Who says that? Who says that? I know the details of healthcare better than most. Better than most. That's so amazing. It really is amazing. Who says that? If Obama had said anything like that, I know taxes better than any CPA. People would be like, what an insane thing to say. If anybody had ever said that but Trump, we've just gotten used to the fact that he's insane.
That's the sad thing, though. This has it's become normal, and that's what they said. The worst thing that can happen is that his inane comments become normal. So now, whenever he says he's the best, he's the greatest, we just kind of laugh it off without realizing how insane this is. Now, the guy who's really mad, the greatest CPA in the country. Oh, he's mad right now. I've been in school. I've been working all my life. Okay. So he follows that up with this comment. Later, he added that he knows more about, quote, the big bills debated in the Congress, quote, than any president that's ever been in office. Okay. So I don't know if this follow-up question was asked, because this is all in print. We don't know how it all went. But I'm curious if they asked him, okay, so you say that you know a lot about the big bills. Which big bill are you talking about? And then whatever he decides, whatever he chooses, okay, give me, the reporters should know the details of these bills, right? Okay, then quiz him on one of the details of the bills and see what he has to say. He doesn't know it. He didn't even know his own policies when he was on the campaign trail. He was never specific about anything. Never specific about anything. Never, never, never. I'm going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. How? Explain how you're going to have Mexico pay for it. Okay, till this day, he comes up with complete and utter bullshit about how Mexico is going to pay for that freaking wall. Okay, ask him the follow-up questions. Okay, I can't believe that he just gets away by saying, I know everything there is to know about the big bills. Who fucking talks like that? An idiot. So just a couple of fun notes on those particular quotes. His own accountant, when asked during the campaign, said, yeah, he used to come in, but this is when he was married to Ivana Trump. And the accountant said, he just come in and go, make my taxes lower.
And then Ivana would ask a bunch of smart questions about what are we doing and what are the different rules and regulations, et cetera. And then they asked the accountant, who's not trying to bury Trump. He's been the Trump family accountant for a long time, and he was his dad's accountant. They asked him, well, how was his dad? Was his dad more proactive during the taxes season and the filings, et cetera? And he's like, oh yeah, his dad was smart.
Well,
okay. So, and he's like, his dad was a real businessman. So, yeah.
Excuse me. But to your point, Anna, what you were saying about asking the follow-up questions, and I love the fact that you guys are over 7 billion viewers and this and that. But Cenk, I don't know if you remember, we met at the alternative press conference, White House press conference dinner or whatever. The reason you guys aren't allowed in there is because you would ask that follow-up question, and they don't want that. You know, when he says he's the expert on taxes, my question would be like, okay, so how does no estate tax help middle America?
Yeah.
Do any of them have a $5.9 million farm or gas station? Like, it's an easy question, but nobody asks that. So yeah, when he says the big bills, you just pick one. Pick the tax bill or you know, anything that has happened, or health care, anything that's been on the table, and ask him, say, can you explain this point? You know, it would be like when they were questioning one of his judicial nominees who was sitting there like, courtroom? Well, no, I've never been in a courtroom.
So I thought of the same thing, healthcare. Look, it's a super easy follow-up question because it was actually in the news. The Republicans went and had a conference with him as they were trying to do that healthcare bill where they would get rid of Obamacare. And they said to him, well, look, we have this issue with the tax cut within the healthcare bill. He's like, no, we're doing tax cuts later. They're like, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's a different bill. But in this bill, there's also a tax cut.
No, you don't understand. He knows everything there is to know about the big bills.
So the Republicans walked out and talked to the press, and they're like, oh my God, of course, most of them anonymously, they're like, he doesn't know what's in the bill. He doesn't know what's in the bill. So a follow-up question, given that you know, if you're a New York Times reporter, that was a big story, you could say, oh, by the way, what was the size of the tax cut in your healthcare proposal? You think he would probably say there was no tax cut. We just did the tax cut, right? He doesn't know anything.
In this reporter's defense, you know he can't ask that question because it's the end of the interview.
That's right. That's a great point.
If there's a pool of reporters, somebody has to. That's when Sarah Huckabee comes out and does the real lying. But he would just be like, yeah, this is over.
It's over. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. And keep in mind that this reporter managed to interview him before. So, you know, it's that access, and that access, everyone's talking about this interview today. Everyone's talking about this reporter and how he managed to get this impromptu conversation with Trump. And so that's the bread and butter for, you know, establishment journalists. And I mean, I don't know, you got to find a balance, I guess, but it's important to really show how incredibly incompetent this guy is. Otherwise, you're just giving him a platform to spew his nonsense. The
reporter's Michael Schmidt, in his defense, he probably thought, nobody's stopping me. Let me just let this guy keep talking.
Right.
Because if he keeps talking, he's going to say these amazing things. So, and he did. He got a lot of amazing quotes out of him.
Yes. So I want to give you guys the final amazing quote that I caught my attention, and it was in regard to Jeff Sessions. Now, he doesn't mention Jeff Sessions by name in this comment, but it was a comment that he made in the context of Jeff Sessions recusing himself from the Russia investigation, which we all know Trump has not been happy about. Now, he says, I don't want to get into loyalty, but I will tell you that, I will say this, Holder, meaning Eric Holder under the Obama administration, protected President Obama, totally protected him. When you look at the things that they did, and Holder protected the president, and I have great respect for that, I'll be honest. So I don't know what he's referring to. He wasn't ever specific about how Holder protected Obama, but you can see there that it's a little bit of a jab at Jeff Sessions for not being loyal to Trump, for not protecting Trump, and that's not what the Attorney General's role is supposed to be.
As Alonzo said in the beginning, he misunderstands how our system works. He thinks the Attorney General his job is to protect the president, even if he's broken the law. No, that's the opposite of his job. And he just doesn't get it.
Well, Holder did protect Obama. He protected him from all those sexual harassment allegations, and he protected Obama when he colluded with Russia, and he protected Obama when he hid his tax returns. And so, I mean, these comparisons, you get tired of, because that'll never happen. You know what I mean? It's so different. Like if a Barack Obama had any one of these things, it would have been the end. You know, Eric Holder, comparing him to Jeff Sessions, you might as well compare their height. It's the same comparison. It's that ridiculous that, and you know, and again, like you said, it just continues and continues, and it's like we're beaten with the stick to where we don't feel the stick hitting us in the head anymore. You know?
Yeah. All right, I want to focus on a small part of the interview that Donald Trump had with the New York Times. His rambling, insane interview. One, I want to give him a little bit of credit. There was one thing that he did say that was right. So he said that he has been, in his words, soft on China because he was hoping that they would help with the negotiations with North Korea. And he said, oil is going to North Korea, and that wasn't my deal. He's right. That actually would have been a decent policy, pressure China to crack down on North Korea, and you got to do some negotiating there. And it looked like he was. And I think that China is not holding up their end of the deal. So that's fair, and I wanted to point out the one right thing that he did say in the interview. But then he, of course, can't help himself because he's Trump. So they asked him about his visit with President Xi Jinping. And he said that the president, quote, treated me better than anybody's ever been treated in the history of China.
I just can't.
Not kidding. That's his exact quote.
Well, it's true. It's absolutely true. No one in the history of China has ever been treated this well. Why would you question that? Why would you question?
I mean, how do you begin to break that down? How would you know how every person in China has been treated throughout history? What a preposterous thing to say.
He's insane.
And why is that a bragging point, by the way? Why is that a good thing? Like, if the leader of China is treating you that well, maybe that's like you should be worried or a little cognizant of that, saying, hey, is he trying to get something out of me, et cetera?
It fits into his narrative that he is the most beloved, respected individual that's ever existed, ever. Like it just plays into that narrative. And look, a person who has to constantly repeat those types of things about themselves knows that it's the antithesis of reality.
Muhammad Ali's entire thing was, I'm the greatest fighter of all time. Muhammad Ali would be like, wow, this guy brags a lot. This guy's over the top.
But look, Muhammad Ali is an idol of mine. I got his picture and his quotes up in my office. A lot of people, you guys see it on the YouTube live videos I do sometimes. But what I love about Ali is that it was always tongue in cheek. He was playing around.
He was kidding. Right? And arguably in the ring, he backed it up. It was believe me, when you got in the ring and he hit you 5 times before you saw the first one coming, right? That's what Richard Pryor said, I didn't even see it coming. He hit me 5 times. He was the greatest of all time and most beloved.
That's right.
Most beloved.
But the reason people liked him is because he had a smile on his face as he said those things, right? And it not only could he back them up, but it was in good spirits, right? Whereas Trump's like, I am the greatest ever. Like, all right, okay. And no one knows accounting better than I do. Like, could you imagine Muhammad Ali was like, no one knows taxes better than I do? You'd be like, what are you talking about? Right? And my favorite, and it's no one else noticed it, but we play it every once in a while on the show. It's among my favorites is Puerto Rico is an island surrounded by water. Big water, ocean water. Anyway, but in Puerto Rico, when he threw the paper towels at people, at the victims of the hurricane, and later when he was asked about it, he said they were big, beautiful towels. They were just normal paper towels wrapped in.
They had these beautiful, soft towels, very good towels.
Why? Why? Why do they have to be big, beautiful, soft towels? They were incredibly normal paper towels. Okay. Because everything has to be extreme. Everything has to be grand. Anything that Trump touches, in the case literally of the paper towels, has to be the best thing that's ever happened. And guys, even if you're a diehard MAGA dude, like really, do you believe those are big, beautiful, soft towels wrapped in the normal plastic? Okay. Do you believe that he has been treated better than anyone has ever been treated in the history of China?
In the history
I think this is something that the people who've had to work with and around him, not like directly, but maybe secretaries or waiters or this or that, or maybe the tutors for his kids or something. They're all sitting around saying, "See, now you know what we listen to every day, right? This has been my life, so they're like, yeah, now you know what it's like to be in this household, to be in this world, because this didn't just start. You know that everything he's done.
Oh my God.
And if you're in that position, you have to just stand there and listen to him say that this is the greatest, this is the biggest, these are the softest paper towels ever. And if you're in the kitchen staff, how long have you wanted to say, no, they're not the soft, they're Bounty. They're just Bounty towels. They're not the softest ever. Everyone buys them. Poor people use them. I quit.
Oh my God.
Okay,
They had these beautiful soft towels, very good towels.
Soft.
Antifa!
Beautiful soft towel.
1 year down, 3 to go.
I hope not. I hope not. All right, we got to take a break, guys. When we come back, we're not even done with this interview. It's so much fun. He's going to talk about the media. Buckle up, brace for impact.
That would be you, sir.
Oh, all right. Let's see what he has to say about us when we come back. You're right in the middle of this podcast. We got another great segment coming up for you. If you'd like the full show, which is actually 5 segments, go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member, you support the show, you support independent media, and you get the whole 2-hour show ad-free every day. Let's go do it now. All right, back on the Young Turks. All right. Let me read a bunch of tweets to you guys. They're fun. /not. Michael Napen writes in, what will happen with that 35% of Fox News informed, armed to the teeth and small hands when Trump gets impeached? He'll rile them up for sure. Well, look, Michael, a lot of us are worried about that. But I'm also worried that Democrats will be over worried about that and then not pursue things when they should. So we'll see how it plays out. Okay, Eclectic Miscellanea writes in, happy belated 12th anniversary to the Young Turks. Thank you and keep up the good work. Happy to be a member going into 2018. Why, thank you. We appreciate that. Everybody can become a member for just $25. Gets you 3 months of membership. Try it out. See if you like it. Get the whole show, all the network shows. That's tytnetwork.com/gift. And Jess writes in, Anna Kasparian rocking the librarian look, complete with black blouse. Jess, I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but
you're allowed to say that. Everybody, calm down.
Okay.
Yes, and by the way, I'm wearing my glasses today because I'm a little sick and I look like shit. So this is like my way of covering my face a little bit.
Okay.
Okay,
I wish note to self, get giant glasses. Anyway, J. Thomas Gordy says, I want to see some proof Trump is good with taxes. Let's see your taxes. That's a great point. How would we know if you're the best at taxes unless you show us your taxes?
Mm-hmm. He must do his own taxes because he's better than the greatest CPA that's ever existed.
So, I mean, why would he trust his dumbass CPA that probably ranks in the middle of the country to do it when he can do it?
Yeah.
And finally, John Connor says, Anna Kasparian is a millennial and strikes like a bird of prey when approaching journalism. You could say she's a millennial falcon.
Wow, that was a long way for that joke.
I know, right?
I like it.
I'm like, I'm waiting for it.
For that one. The millennial falcon, okay.
But it's not a bad nickname. Maybe it'll stick.
I like AK-47.
Yeah, I haven't used that one in a long time.
It is 47, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
Okay. All right. Actually, you know what? When we host, you AK-47.
You're 47 now?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. All right, sister, let's keep it going. Let's not get depressed here.
Okay. During Donald Trump's impromptu interview with the New York Times, he talked about how the media wants him to get reelected because it's good for their ratings. Here's his exact quote. Another reason that we're going to win another 4 years is because newspapers, television, all forms of media will tank if I'm not there because without me, their ratings are going down the tubes. Okay, so, okay, look, I'm actually going to defend him a little bit in what he just said. So hold, just give me an opportunity to do it before people start going crazy. But let me give you the rest of his statement as well. He said, without me, the New York Times will indeed be not the failing New York Times, but the failed New York Times. Mind you, he's speaking to a reporter from the New York Times. So, okay. And then finally, they basically have to let me win. And eventually, probably 6 months before the election, they'll be loving me because they're saying, please, please don't lose Donald Trump. Okay.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
So there's so much to break apart here.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, if the New York Times is failing, why did you just give him a 30-minute interview? So if a random, blog came up to you, would you give him a 30-minute interview? No, because you really respect the New York Times. Let's keep it real. So I'm with Anna. I agree and disagree with parts of this. I think that, some parts of the media did love Donald Trump. They loved him so much during the election, they'd show his empty podium. They'd be a giant Bernie Sanders rally going on, 12, 15,000 people, and they wouldn't show it. They just show an empty podium of Donald Trump. So, and it's not like Bernie didn't do well in the ratings. He did online. The rest of the media would talk about, Bernie gets clicks, but okay, all right, so you agree that he actually also gets really good ratings, but it doesn't matter. It was Trump, because they found him to be entertaining. Here's another thing that I agree with. He says that without me, their ratings are going to go down. Well, there's some truth to that. The ratings for all of television is going down, and cable news has been okay, partly because the guy's a lunatic and he'll say crazy stuff, and then people want to tune in to see what crazy things that he said. The part that I don't agree with is him projecting onto the media the way he thinks. So he says they'll be dying, they'll be loving me 6 months before the election. In other words, he thinks they're going to rig it and give him positive coverage before the election to keep him, right? Now, they're not going to do that. That's not, generally speaking, not what they do. You could have legitimate conversations about their bias, but they don't all get together in a room and go, hey, is it good for our ratings? So, okay, everybody now switch. We're all going to pretend to love Donald Trump. That's not how it works. But in everything he does, that is how things work. They go, do we like this guy or don't we don't like this guy? We like him? Okay, we're going to give him stuff. We don't like him, we're going to hammer him. Right. And since he operates that way, he assumes everyone else does.
Yeah. But it's also just train wreck television.
Yes.
I mean, that's all it is. News outlets, they love this, right? And it gets a lot of clicks. And like you said, he's going to say something stupid. But it's not like news is going to go out of business if we get back to having a grown-up for president. You know what I mean? Like, news existed from the beginning, and it will still exist after he's gone. They'll cover it because it's the craziest thing. I mean, it's like what Real Housewives of the blank, right? So so you watch it because they're going to start catfighting and yelling and this and that. If that show goes off, it's not like the Bravo network's like, all right, we're done, we're out of business.
They might be though.
They'll just show something else. But you know what I mean? Like this is more of his insane ego. It's insane to say that newspapers and television news will all go out of business when I go away. That's what he's saying. He's they'll go out of, the New York Times will shut down the day that Donald Trump leaves. The New York Times has survived world wars, and economic collapse and you name it, and it's been there. But the day Donald Trump leaves, they're like, all right, let's lock it up. Let's shut down.
His criticisms are so incredibly unoriginal and repetitive. It's always Vanity Fair on its last leg, failing New York Times, failing NFL. Like, everything is failing. Everything is losing viewership, ratings, whatever it is. I mean, just think of something different. Like, try to switch it up a little bit, right? But I agree with you. The news, especially the New York Times, will always be around. But when I say that I'm going to defend him a little bit, it does speak to a little of what you mentioned, Cenk, and also just memories of what media people said during this last election, okay? Like Leslie Moonves, who was saying, oh, you know, Trump, bad for the country, but great for our ratings. He got a lot of heat for saying that. He's the head of CBS, but he said it. He said it, and then later he tried to walk it back a little bit. But it's true, yeah, it's good for your ratings because people love tragedy porn. People love watching train wrecks. And he was entertaining, there's no question about it. But another reason why I think the media covered him so much and gave him all of this free advertising is because they didn't have to talk about policy, right? He was a great distraction from content that actually mattered. How much conversation did you see about policy during the 2016 election on cable news? Very little.
Well, you know, Anna, let me go a step further there. What's interesting is for all the coverage that Trump got during the election and afterwards, the one part of his stump speeches that they almost never covered was when he talked about the swamp. You actually heard more about the swamp after he won the election than during the election itself, because that talks about corruption. And the last thing television wants to talk about is corruption. They buried under the excuse of, oh, campaign finance reform is an arcane topic that people don't care about. Meanwhile, both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are lighting up stadium full of people by talking about the corruption. Now, why doesn't television want to talk about the substance, especially that issue? Because most of the money in politics goes to TV. Billions of dollars, right? So they are paid not to care about that and to hush that up. So that's the one thing they didn't cover with Trump. Now, if he had nuance, if he had any bit of intelligence, he could make an interesting point about the media, saying, look, MSNBC's ratings are up because they're oppositional to my administration, and their ratings will go down if I'm not around to be this volatile character. That would be accurate. Imagine him making a statement like that.
Did you? Let's back up. Let's back up and look at some of the words in that sentence you just used.
Volatile.
Volatile. When is he going to say that? When is he going to say that?
He has the best vocabulary of all vocabulary
people in the world. She was laying over there next to Miss Bipartisan. You know,
and so the second part of that is that the New York Times actually is in great shape. It's in way better shape than it was a bunch of years ago because they have switched to a model where they are relying more heavily on subscribers, as we do, than they are on advertisers. And by the way, that has made their reporting much tougher and I would argue even more accurate, more probing. Why? Because they're trying to serve the audience rather than serve their advertisers. So they buried a Harvey Weinstein story when 2/3 of their money came from advertisers, and Miramax and the companies that Weinstein ran were huge advertisers in the New York Times. Now that 2/3 of their money comes from subscription, they killed Weinstein, right? And so so those phenomena are fascinating. You think Trump knows any of that? Okay, he doesn't know any of it. So the New York Times, actually, of all the people that he mentioned, is in the best shape. And without him, they'll be perfectly fine. And the last point is what Alonzo said. After every election, people come up to us and they go, oh, okay, are you guys going to go out of business? I mean, it was you got a big peak in the election and now you're done, right? I'm like, look at the word news. We're in the news business. The word new is in news. Okay, it is the plural of new. So yes, other things come up and we're totally fine. We were fine after every election and all the media still exists. And of course, the bottom line is the reason he says this is because he thinks the planet revolves around his big orange head.
Well, as you mentioned, Trump doesn't know much, and this next story is an example of that. Donald Trump is not a believer in climate change, and he has taken actions to prove that, including pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. Now, recently, he wanted to use an example of weather to make a statement about climate because he's an idiot and doesn't know the difference between those two things. In a tweet, he said the following: in the East, it could be the coldest New Year's Eve on record. Perhaps we could use a little bit of that good old global warming that our country, but not other countries, was going to pay trillions of dollars to protect against. Bundle up. So, you guys just.
So, you guys. All right. So, of course, weather, they had to explain to him. NASA had to literally send this quote in. Weather is what conditions of atmosphere are over a short period of time, and climate is how the atmosphere behaves over relatively long periods of time. You already lost him. That's longer than a tweet. And even if he read that, he'd be like, yeah, I got it. So it's cold outside. I don't get it, right? Because he's not very bright. So some facts. the 8 warmest years ever have all come since 1998. This past October was the second warmest October on record. First 10 months of 2017 were, according to NASA, the second warmest 10 months ever, second only to the year before, 2016. And it goes on and on and on. 97% of the climate scientists in the world agree that the climate change is real and man-made. Look, but we're having conversations with a guy incapable of understanding the words we're using. Although he says he has the best words. But he thinks that climate change is a Chinese hoax. How do you have a conversation with a guy who's on a different planet? Like, what do you say? No, China didn't gather 97% of the world's scientists, the Norwegians, the ones from Botswana, and the other guy from Peru. They didn't all get them in one room in Shanghai and be like, all right, do you all agree to do this hoax so we can trick Donald Trump, right? I mean, it's like going into an insane asylum and trying to reason with people.
Yeah.
And he's not mentally capable of understanding the difference between weather and climate.
Well, it's another one that if it wasn't real, it would be funny, right? Because on New Year's Eve in New York, somebody would be out there watching the ball drop and they're freezing, and jokingly they'd be like, man, we need some of that global warming. And like it would be a joke and you'd laugh, but that's not the president of the United States saying it like it's real. That's the scary part, that he actually says this. And like you said, Cenk, no one can explain to him like, well, if the temperature of the planet increases, 2 degrees, then the Arctic ice melts and the oceans rise and we have more hurricanes. And like no one, and I'm sure down at NASA they have a conversation and they're like, it's your turn. It's your turn to talk to him. Like, no, I talked to him last week. Well, it's your, no, I talked to him.
There's
like,
no way that Trump has ever had a conversation with a NASA scientist.
Yeah, there is some lowly intern who has to, it's like, all right, you got to make the call. You have to, Yeah, they're so smart. They have to find someone in between because they're like, I can't speak as dumb as he understands. Yeah. I'm too smart to make this dumb enough for him. So we need somebody in the middle who can translate smart to dumb. Like it's 2 different languages.
Yeah, look, the scary part about all of this is when you look at the issue of climate change, the impact of climate change that we're already experiencing in the context of all the other policies that he's pushing for and has succeeded in. So what did Trump have in terms of a legislative win? Tax cuts for the wealthy. And what have we been experiencing more and more of every year? Extreme weather conditions, right? Weather conditions that have been exacerbated by climate change. So increased severity of hurricanes, increased severity of wildfires. These are all issues that have required federal funding in order to provide disaster relief. And scientists are saying every year it's going to get worse, and we're about to experience a significant cut in funding just so millionaires and billionaires can continue living high off the hog. So that really makes me worry, because there will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. We're going to experience them in the worst ways. And I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader. And by the way, Trump's statements reminded me of a video that we showed you guys back in 2015 of Senator Inhofe, who at the time was the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee. Here's what he had to say to, make a statement about whether or not climate change exists.
We keep hearing that 2014 has been the warmest year on record. I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball. And that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out, very unseasonal. So here, Mr. President, catch this.
Well, that explains it all, because the fact that there's snow in Washington, D.C. in January or February means that global warming doesn't exist. I don't know what's wrong with you two. There was obvious evidence right there, and yet you're still hanging on to this global warming myth. Let me tell you something. If there was global warming, if global warming really worked like that, like suddenly it's 80 degrees everywhere, you know how many of us would be moving to Canada tomorrow? We'd be like, all right, it's warm. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, and there's about a snowball's chance in hell of them understanding the difference between weather and climate. So last note on that. Look, on any particularly hot day, we could then say, okay, global warming is real. Oh, it got cold again in the winter. I guess it's not real. No, of course you don't do it day by day. You look at the macro picture. You look at the overall picture. Was it hot or cold on one day, but was it hot for the entirety of the year? What is the trend? And do you know what the 3 hottest years on record are for the last 140 years? 2016, 2015, 2017. So the last 3 years were 3 hottest years ever in history, in our recorded history, okay? So that's a trend, that's climate, as opposed to it snowed on one day. I mean, these morons, then you just move up to the North Pole and they're like, problem solved.
Well, that's why words like scientific evidence have made the list of 7 dirty words that we're not supposed to be using anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that amazing? You know, Alonzo, I never thought about it that way, but George Carlin had those 7 dirty words and stuff, and they were banned because they were dirty.
Right.
Now, science is dirty.
It's a dirty word.
And they literally banned the word science-based and evidence-based from some departments in the government.
That's right.
We went from like body parts to science being considered dirty.
And yet, the words voodoo and idiocy still allowed to use anytime.
Oh, yeah.
Hoax? Use away like
magic. It's magic. That's what happened.
Right. Okay, all right, we got to take a break. And when we come back, so who, according to the odds makers, who has the best chance of becoming president in 2020? Really interesting. You're going to want to know the answer when we return. Thanks for watching or listening to this free version of the Young Turks podcast. You know that the full show is at tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you get the full show ad-free. We love you for watching or listening either way. There's going to be a new free podcast tomorrow. You can keep on doing that. But if you want to get the full show ad-free, tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk, and I'll see you soon.